Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem, and in today's top stories. Hostilities throughout Israel's northern front are seemingly escalating. The United States says it is working tirelessly to avert regional escalation. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi asserts that once the war is complete, it will be the end of the Jewish state of Israel. Hostilities are seemingly escalating along Israel's northern front, while in tandem, the fighting in Gaza persists unhindered. The last 24 hours included high-intensity clashes in comparison to the previous level of hostilities, as Israel is clearly losing patience with the Iranian proxy militias in Lebanon and Syria.
בסוריה חיסלנו היום בבית ג'אן את חסן הקשה, שהיה אחראי מרכזי לשיגור רקטות של ארגון הטרור חמאס משטח סוריה לעבר עורף מדינת ישראל בשבועות האחרונים. אנחנו נמשיך לפעול כנגד בחירי חמאס. בנוסף תקפנו היום שורת מטרות חיזבאללה ברחבי דרום לבנון ובהם אתרים צבאיים של הארגון. השבנו בירי לאזורים מהם זוהו שיגורים לשטח הארץ. כפי שאמרנו מתחילת המלחמה, לא נשלים עם איום סמוך לגבול הצפון, אמרנו את זה ואנחנו מתכוונים לזה.
It is important to highlight that while hostilities along Israel's northern front are gradually intensifying, fighting within the terror-plagued Gaza Strip has not necessarily diminished, in spite of a transition into a phase of so-called lower intensity.
עדיין יש בצפון פעילי טרור ואמצעי לחימה, אבל הם לא מתפקדים בתוך מסגרת צבאית מאורגנת, וכעת אנחנו פועלים באזור הזה בצורה אחרת, בתמהיל כוחות אחר, על מנת להעמיק את ההישג. אנחנו מתמקדים בשלב הזה במרכז הרצועה, באזור מחנות המרכז, ובדרום הרצועה, באזור ח'אן יונס. מדובר עדיין בפעילות מבצעית עזה, פעילות מבצעית מורכבת, ניהול קרבות קשים, גם במרכז וגם בדרום. הלחימה תימשך במהלך שנת 2024.
Rear Admiral Hagari further stressed that while a transition of the modus operandi was made in the northern part of the Palestinian enclave, heavy fighting persists in both the central and southern parts of the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken initially met this morning with Israeli President Yitzhak Herzog, during the course of which the Israeli head of state highlighted Jerusalem's outrage over the baseless South African accusation under the leadership of the ANC of alleged Israeli crimes supposedly mounting to genocide.
On Thursday, a proceeding will start in the International Court of Justice in The Hague, whereby South Africa has sued Israel for supposedly genocide. There's nothing more atrocious and preposterous than this claim. Actually, our enemies, the Hamas, in their charter, call for the destruction and annihilation of the state of Israel, the only nation state of the Jewish people. The Convention Against Genocide was enacted by the international community following the worst atrocities of humankind, the Shoah, the Holocaust, which was aimed specifically against the Jews, the Jewish people, in order to eliminate the Jewish race, the Jewish people. In Hamas's charter, it's almost identical in many, many ways. And here, with the hypocrisy of South Africa, we will be there at the International Court of Justice and will present proudly our case of using self-defense under our most inherent right under international humanitarian law, where we are doing our utmost under extremely complicated circumstances on the ground to make sure that there will be no unintended consequences and no civilian casualties. We are alerting, we are calling, we are showing, we are sending leaflets, we are using all the means that international law enables us in order to move out people so that we can unravel this huge city of terror underneath in people's homes, living rooms and bedrooms, mosques and shops and schools. Yesterday we unraveled a huge factory of terror underneath a humanitarian corridor which Israel is employing in order to help the civilians of Gaza. So I want to thank the United States of America, President Biden, and the administration and you, Secretary Blinken, for your moral call of duty, for the fact that you're standing steadfast with Israel in this battle, which has to do clearly with humanity and with the values of the free world. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And as always, we greatly value the President's leadership in these incredibly challenging times for Israel, for countries in the region, and especially for people who continue to suffer. I've just come from a number of countries in the region, Turkey, Greece, Jordan, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and I want to be able to share some of what I heard from those leaders with the President, as well as with the Prime Minister and the Cabinet later today. And of course, we'll have an opportunity to sit with the families of some of the hostages and discuss our relentless efforts to bring everyone home and back with their families. And there's lots to talk about, in particular, about the way forward. So I look forward to these conversations. As always, it's very good to be with you.
Following his meeting with President Herzog, Secretary Blinken held an extended one-on-one meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Nice to see you.
While the contents of their meeting were naturally not made public, prior to visiting Israel, Washington's top diplomat asserted in remarks to the press during his visit to Qatar that the Biden administration is resolute on the need to further enhance the flow of humanitarian goods into the Gaza Strip, irrespective of the fact that the majority of the referred to territories remain under Hamas control. Separately, and essentially more profound from Washington's perspective, is the aspiration to avoid the war from spiraling into a regional conflict.
This is a moment of profound tension in the region. This is a conflict that could easily metastasize, causing even more insecurity and even more suffering. We share a commitment to ensure that the conflict does not expand. And I think we also share a commitment to use the influence, the relationships, the ties that we have with different parties in the region to try to avoid escalation and to deter new threats from opening. This is not just a regional issue. It's a matter of global concern. And that's certainly the case when it comes to the Houthi attacks on freedom of navigation in one of the world's busiest trade corridors, the Red Sea. These attacks have directly affected the citizens, the cargo, the commercial interests of more than 40 countries. They've disrupted or diverted nearly 20% of global shipping.
Predictably, the Qatari Prime Minister, whose country hosts the leadership of Hamas and maintains warm relations with the Islamic Republic of Iran, has voiced Doha's vigorous objection to any Western military intervention in the Red Sea, claiming it could be resolved diplomatically by pressuring Israel to end the war in the Gaza Strip, which Qatar has been mediating on behalf of Hamas.
Of course, we see the events and what's occurring over there in the Red Sea, but our biggest worry is to have a consequence all the time that will keep us in a loop that will never end and will create a real tension in the entire region. So we hope that we see a stop to what's happening to civilian ships as soon as possible. To a diplomatic means, that should be the best way.
It is worth noting that the Iranian regime has cynically voiced dismay over Qatar's failure to end Israel's defensive war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, claiming that the war's continuation could ultimately result in regional escalation, which the Ayatollah regime unashamedly blames the United States and a number of European nations for.
به دنبال حل مسئله توقف جنایات جنگی رژیم صهیونیستی و ممانعت از گسترش دامنه‌های جنگ، ناامنی و بی‌ثباتی در منطقه هستند، باید این اراده به خواست خودشون رو به صورت عملی هم به ظهور برسانند. ملت‌های دنیا به صورت آشکار این تناقض رو در گفتار و در رفتار دولت آمریکا و برخی از کشورهای اروپایی می‌بینند.
While blaming Israel, the United States, and Europe for hostilities which were initially planned, facilitated, and directed by no other than the Islamic Republic of Iran itself, during a funeral for nearly 100 supporters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps who have been killed in a twin Islamic State bombing attack during a commemoration ceremony for arch-terrorist Qasem Soleimani on January 5th, President Ibrahim Raisi seized the opportunity to proclaim that once the conflict between Israel and Hamas is complete, a war which he referred to as Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, the Jewish state would no longer exist. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I'd like to encourage you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. Moreover, it is important to highlight that TV7 Israel is a donation-based non-profit ministry with all of our productions available free of charge. Therefore, if you're blessed by our daily updates and would like to help us bear the costs, please consider making a donation. You can do so by visiting our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. I'm Jonathan Hessen, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you during our upcoming TV7 Israel updates. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.